When I was young, there was a time when I figured, the hell with it. I'd never even said the word transgender out loud. I mean, I couldn't imagine saying that. Transgender? Please. So instead, one day, a few years after I got out of college, I put everything that I had into the car, and I just started driving north. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I was certain that something would occur to me that would end this transgender business once and for all. And so I set my sights on Nova Scotia. It was about as far away as I could imagine being from Baltimore and still be on dry land. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I was certain that when I arrived, I'd put an end to this transgender business, once and for all. So I drove north. I went past New York City, went past Boston, I went past Portland, Maine. In Bar Harbor, I took a ferry across the Bay of Fundy. The name of the ferry was the Blue Nose. When I arrived in Nova Scotia, I camped in a little tent that I had in the back, and sometimes I'd stay in motels that were closed for the season, but that the owners let me stay in for half price. In my hand, I had a photograph that I'd had taken on the ship. On the ship, the Blue Nose, there was someone dressed up in a rabbit costume. You could have a picture of yourself taken with the rabbit, and then, I guess, keep it as a memento of your trip to Nova Scotia. I purchased mine. It showed a young man, at least I think that's a young man, holding a book of poetry as a moth-eaten rabbit bends over him. As I drove in the car north and east, I listened to the tape deck, back when there were tape decks. I listened to a band called the Warlocks sing a song called In the Early Morning Rain, which goes like this. In the early morning rain, with $1 in my hand, and an aching in my heart, and my pockets full of sand, I'm a long way from home, and I miss my loved ones so. In the early morning rain, with no place to go. I thought about my parents. I thought about this girl I knew named Deirdre. I thought about the clear and inescapable fact that I was female in spirit, and how in order to live in the world, I'd have to give up on every dream I'd ever had, except for one. One night I was camping in that tent, and there was this fierce breeze that was blowing in off the ocean, shaking the tent back and forth. And I was reading a book called Great Tales of Horror and the Supernatural. I know, right? There was one story, I still remember the title, which was, "Oh, whistle, and I'll come to you, my lad." The next night, I stayed in a motel for the night, and I opened my suitcase, and I put on a blue knit top and a bra, and I combed out my hair, and I looked in the mirror, and there I saw a relatively normal-looking young woman, and I thought, this is the source of all the trouble? Because of this, I can't live in the world? I thought, you know, I could just move up here, start life over again as a woman. I could tell everyone I was Canadian. Then I lay down on that motel bed and I sobbed big tears. nobody would ever believe I was Canadian. The next day I climbed a mountain, and I was trying to clear my head, but it wouldn't clear. So up I went, past the tree line, past the shrub line, until in the end there was nothing except moss. And there I stood at the top of this mountain on Cape Breton Island, 1,000 miles away from everyone I knew, totally cut off from the world. Below me, the cold Atlantic, and this fierce wind blowing against my body. And I crept up to the edge of the cliff, and I looked down below, and I played this little game with the wind. So I'd kind of lean over the edge a little bit, and then the wind would blow me back. And then I'd get a little closer, and then the wind would blow me back again. And then I stood there, and I thought, is this the thing you've come here to do? Shall we do that then? And I closed my eyes, and I held my arms out like wings, or like, you know, that universal gesture of someone going, I don't know. And I leaned forward like this. And then this huge blast of wind blew me back. And I landed in the moss, and I was looking up at this blue sky. And I felt something. And I felt a voice saying to me, are you all right? You're going to be okay. Now, these many years later, I don't know whose voice that actually was. The ghost of my father? Jesus? God? I don't know. I do wonder sometimes whether it actually makes a difference to give a name to the spirits that are looking out for us. But these many years later, sometimes I think maybe that was the voice of my future self, the woman whom I eventually became, a woman who now, 31 years after I stood there, looks more or less like that woman I saw in the mirror in the motel. Here she is, the young woman drawing. She looks at us wearing that fabulous dress, her drawing pad on her knee, illuminated in light coming through a window over her shoulder. A broken window, in fact, if you look at it carefully. And through that broken window, we see in the far distance some little drama. A man, a woman. It seems so simple, doesn't it? Men and women. We can assume there's some relationship between her and that couple. Was she in love with the man? Was she in love with the woman? Did she used to be the man? Of course, there's no way of knowing, but here she is, looking at us, bathed in light. And what we know is that because of her art, whatever that drama is, it's behind her now. It's hard to be gay or lesbian. To be transgender can be even harder. There have been many times over the last 30 years when I've lost all hope. I can't tell you how to get here from there. You have to figure that out for yourself. But I do know that instead of taking that leap all those years ago, instead I turned around and began my long journey back toward my home.